Hey guys, welcome to day 18 of our Boundaries series. Today, we're talking about sacrifice, which I love. I love that this is showing up in time for the Christmas season. We're honoring the greatest sacrifice that ever happened for the Christians among us. I am one. Um, and we get this chance to talk about the role of sacrifice in our regular lives and when it is and when it is not appropriate to sacrifice. What is a sacrifice? Right? Actually, I think I'm just going to go and look that up right now. Define sacrifice. Okay. It says the act of slaughtering an animal or surrendering a possession as an offering to God or to a divine or supernatural figure. In the Old Testament, they would kill animals, and then in the New Testament, we're asked to give the sacrifice of a contrite heart and a broken heart and a contrite spirit, right? This emotional sacrifice. We're asked to sacrifice in a really different way now. We're asked to give up parts of ourselves, parts of our personalities, or what we think is our personality, but it's really false beliefs and basically lies that we've bought into on an emotional level. That's what we're being asked to give up. We're being asked to sacrifice our old way of being to become a new creature, which is really interesting and exciting. Now, one thing about sacrifice is that it involves letting go, it involves giving something up. But one thing to me that stands out about sacrifice is this idea that it's typically something that is a little hard to give up. Like if it's easy to give up, was it a sacrifice? Years ago in Sunday school, we were talking about sacrifice, and I asked the class, I was teaching gospel doctrine, and I asked if it was a true sacrifice. So if sacrifices are things that we give, is you taking your old clothes that you're not using anymore to the Goodwill to donate? Is that a sacrifice? And it was really interesting. I thought, of course, no, it's not. You're not using that stuff. Like, it's not a sacrifice. You threw away your trash by giving it to other people. Like, to me, that's what it was. I had a bunch of people say that it was a sacrifice, which was really interesting to me. Anyways, I guess people all have their own understandings of what it means. But today in the Boundaries book, we're on day 18 of the Boundaries book, 30 Days of Belief Work Boundaries. This is one of the things that I love from it. Let's go ahead, just close your eyes for a minute. Imagine a tube of light shining down on you that contains information on the divine perspective on sacrifice. This is God's divine perspective on sacrifice, getting downloaded to all of your cells and kind of upgrading your being just to understand the concept on a spiritual level. You don't have to understand it on a conscious level, but this is just strictly spiritually. Can you understand the divine perspective on sacrifice? And then we're going to have that tube of light send down information on when it is appropriate to sacrifice for others and when it is not appropriate to sacrifice for others. Okay, put your hands in your heart, breathe it in, and we can tap. I am now accepting the divine perspective on when to give things up for others and when not to. We're going to do that again. I am now accepting the divine perspective on when to give things up for others and when not to. Go ahead and put your hands on your heart and breathe it in. I think as religious people, as mothers, as, in the different situations we find ourselves in, it can be a hard line to walk, knowing when to sacrifice and when not to. As a mother, as a person involved in a lot of different responsibilities to other people, be you male or female, a lot of times we can end up in situations where people are going to ask a lot of us and they want a lot of us. And we have to decide when it is appropriate to make sacrifices for others and when it is not. Because I don't believe it's always appropriate all the time. And I think there are some people that would argue it's always appropriate all the time. If anybody asks, you got to bend over backwards and do everything that they say. That's how we end up in burnout. That's how we end up stressed. And the scripture coming to my mind is that's when you're running faster than you can walk. And it is a disaster when you do that. You're going to trip and fall and hurt yourself, and it's going to be a bad thing. We can't do that. We have to be wise. That's what this is all about. It's about wisdom, because you can't, in my opinion, you can't just have super strict boundaries that you never ever shift for anyone ever. Maybe, there's certainly some boundaries that should be like that. Like the boundary of your marriage, but But for a lot of these things, you know, most of the time, you might have a certain boundary on when it's appropriate to sacrifice for somebody. And sometimes you're going to have to use your wisdom, use your divine connection to realize that, no, we've got to take a different tack here. Sometimes that's going to mean making a sacrifice that you would normally not. And sometimes it's going to be the opposite of not making a sacrifice that you normally would. So today, that's what I wanted to bring into our awareness. I wanted us to really think about, what confusion do we have about sacrifice? If we look at our own lives, where are we sacrificing? This is going to be a good inventory. Like if you have a couple minutes to write in your journal or something and just assess, what sacrifices am I making right now? Am I making any sacrifices? Who am I sacrificing for? Who is benefiting from my sacrifice? Am I doing it for God? Am I doing it for me? Am I doing it for other people? Like what is the motivating factor here? What am I doing? Is it appropriate? Are there new boundaries that I need to put into my life so that I can have my needs met and other people can have their needs met? Is it possible that I could have the faith that other people will get their needs met, even if I am not the one that's bending over backwards for them? Okay, these are just some things to be thinking about, just stuff to have on our radar. So that is what I wanted to bring to your awareness today. Think about sacrifice. This is a great time of year to be thinking about sacrifice. Hopefully it's on all of our minds all the time, because we have been the recipients of an unfathomable sacrifice. How do we pay that forward? How do we find peace when it's not appropriate to pay that forward, right? Sometimes it is not the right thing to stretch ourselves so thin so that we can serve other people. Sometimes we have to just say, I'm sorry, I can't, no, and not do it. So that's some thoughts for today. Thank you guys for being here, and I will see you tomorrow.